Can I borrow clothes for my job interview? The poor girl's voice trembled as she stood in front of the boutique window, clutching a worn plastic bag that held all she owned. She had no idea the man who turned at her voice wasn't just another passerby, but a CEO millionaire, dressed in a plain hoodie, hiding the power to change her life with a single decision. Her shoes were torn, her eyes carried both shame and hope, and yet there was something in her tone that pierced deeper than pity. The millionaire paused, his world of luxury colliding with her world of survival. He could have walked away, but something about her reminded him of a promise he once broke. Who was this girl, really? Why did her question shake a man who owned skyscrapers? And what did he do next that left the entire city talking? The morning sun crawled across the skyline, burning away the fog that clung to the cracked sidewalks of downtown Chicago. Buses hissed, horns blared, and life moved with the same cold rhythm that ignored the invisible people, those like Alyssa Moore. She stood outside a designer boutique called Cavalli and Crown, staring at the mannequin in the window wearing a sleek navy suit, one she could never afford but desperately needed. Her fingers tightened around the crumpled flyer in her hand. It was for an interview at Harrington Dynamics, one of the city's top logistics firms. The position wasn't glamorous administrative assistant, but to Alyssa, it was hope. The kind of hope that meant she might finally stop counting coins to buy dinner. The kind of hope that meant she could pay for her little brother's medication again. Her throat tightened. She whispered to herself, "Just one good chance. That's all I need." Behind her, a deep voice said, "Are you okay?" She turned quickly, startled. A man stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed casually in jeans and a gray hoodie. He didn't look like much at first glance, but his eyes carried something different. Calm, sharp, like someone used to being obeyed. Alyssa stammered. I was wondering if they rent clothes here. For interviews. He followed her gaze to the mannequin. A faint smile touched his lips, the kind that didn't mock but quietly studied. "You've got an interview?" "Yes, sir." Her cheeks burned. "But I can't show up looking like this." She looked down at her wrinkled blouse, at the hem she had tried to stitch herself the night before. He looked at her longer than comfort allowed, but not with pity. More like he was remembering something or someone. "What's your name?" "Alyssa." "Alyssa Moore." He nodded once. "Well, Alyssa Moore," he said, "let's fix that." Before she could protest, he pushed open the boutique door and motioned for her to follow. The interior was all glass and gold, the kind of place that smelled of perfume and quiet wealth. The sales clerk looked up, already frowning at Alyssa's clothes, until she saw the man beside her. Then her tone shifted instantly. "Good morning, Mr. Bennett." Alyssa froze. Mr. Bennett? The name sounded familiar. She had seen it on a billboard once. Harrington Dynamics CEO. Mason Bennett expands operations into Europe. Her stomach flipped. "Oh my God," he smiled faintly at the clerk. "Get her a full outfit. Suit, shoes, the works. Classic professional. And have it ready in 20 minutes. The clerk blinked, then nodded. "Of course, Mr. Bennett." Alyssa's lips parted. "Sir, please, I can't accept this." "I was just asking if they rent." He raised a hand. "Consider it a loan. You'll return it after your interview." "But why are you helping me?" she asked quietly. Mason looked at her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Because I know what it's like to walk into a room where everyone decides who you are before you even open your mouth." That silenced her. The words carried weight, not pity but truth. She watched him turn away, speaking to the clerk with the effortless tone of someone who controlled rooms like this for a living. When he left to take a call outside, Alyssa was guided into a fitting room with more mirrors than she'd ever seen in her life. The fabric felt unreal beneath her fingers, smooth, powerful. As she slipped into the navy suit, she caught her reflection and hardly recognized herself. But beneath the reflection, her mind raced. Why did he help me? Why me? When she stepped out, Mason was waiting, phone in hand. He looked up and paused. For a moment, his eyes softened. "Now you look like someone who belongs anywhere she walks into," he said. Alyssa tried to smile, but her voice trembled. "Thank you. I'll bring it back as soon as the interview's over." He nodded, handing her a business card. "That's my driver's number. If you need a ride, call. Don't be late." She took the card, her heart pounding. The name embossed in gold read, Mason Harrington Bennett, CEO, Harrington Dynamics. Her mind blurred. He owns the company, the one I'm interviewing for. By the time she looked up, he was gone, leaving her standing under the golden lights, clutching the card like a secret. She didn't know this act of kindness wasn't random. Mason hadn't just seen a girl in need. He had seen someone familiar, someone who reminded him of the daughter of an old friend he failed years ago. And as Alyssa left the store, walking toward the interview that could change her life, Mason watched from across the street, hands in his pockets, eyes shadowed by something deeper than curiosity. Because sometimes, the richest man in the city isn't looking for a project to fund, but a soul to redeem. The elevator doors of Harrington Dynamics closed behind Alyssa, sealing her into a world that smelled like polished glass and power. Her palms were damp, her heart loud enough to hear. Every surface reflected ambition. People in tailored suits, screens glowing with market data, conversations humming with confidence. She had never felt smaller in her life. The receptionist directed her to the 27th floor, where the administrative interviews were being held. Alyssa clutched her worn purse to her side, careful not to scuff the borrowed shoes. Her reflection in the glass wall caught her off guard again. The woman staring back looked strong, capable, even graceful. But inside, she was still the girl who had grown up skipping dinner so her little brother could eat. As the elevator opened, she exhaled slowly and stepped out. "Next applicant, please," called a woman in a crisp gray blazer, her tone clipped and professional. Alyssa smiled nervously and handed over her file. The woman scanned the resume, her expression barely moving. Alyssa Moore, community college. Temporary clerk at a pharmacy. No corporate experience. "I'm a fast learner," Alyssa said softly. "I work hard, and I've handled client data, managed accounts." The woman's lips twitched slightly. "We'll see." Alyssa sat in the waiting area while others went in before her. Candidates with sleek portfolios and confidence carved into every word. Each one emerged smiling or pretending to. When her name was called, she whispered a silent prayer and walked into the interview room. 3 people sat behind a glass table. The HR manager, a middle-aged woman in pearls, and a young executive tapping on his tablet. The HR manager glanced up. "Alyssa Moore, please have a seat." She sat, trying not to fidget. "We see you've done clerical work. Tell us, what do you think makes you fit for a position at Harrington Dynamics?" Alyssa hesitated, then straightened. "Because I understand responsibility," she said. "I've worked with limited resources my whole life. I know how to manage time, money, and people under pressure, and I don't take opportunities for granted." The room went quiet for a second. The woman in pearls nodded faintly. The executive looked up for the first time, intrigued. "Interesting answer," he said. "What would you do if your supervisor gave you an impossible task? One that could risk the company's reputation if you failed?" "I'd ask questions," Alyssa replied. "Not to challenge, but to understand. And if I still didn't have a solution, I'd work until I found one. Because failing without trying isn't failure, it's surrender." The HR manager leaned back, exchanging glances with the others. "That's remarkably insightful." A small ember of confidence began to glow inside her. Maybe, just maybe, she had a chance. Then, without warning, the door opened. A tall man entered, his voice calm but commanding. "Carry on," he said quietly, stepping inside. Alyssa's heart froze. Mason Bennett. The same man who'd helped her that morning now stood before her, except here, under the company's lights, the casual hoodie was gone. He wore a charcoal suit perfectly cut, his expression cool and unreadable. The HR manager immediately stood. "Mr. Bennett, we didn't expect—" "Sit down," he said gently. "I just wanted to observe." Alyssa's pulse raced. "Why is he here? Does he recognize me?" Mason didn't look at her, not directly. But when their eyes met for a fleeting second, she saw something unspoken, a glint of recognition, followed by a flicker of emotion he quickly masked. The HR manager cleared her throat. "Miss Moore, please continue." But Alyssa could barely hear. Her mind spun. "Does this mean I won't get the job? Will they think he brought me here on purpose?" Still, she straightened her shoulders and spoke with quiet conviction. "I don't have all the qualifications others might have, but I have something they can't buy. Grit. Every job I've held, I've earned. Every mistake I've learned from. If you give me a chance, I'll prove I belong here." Silence followed. Then Mason spoke, his tone steady. "Thank you, Miss Moore. That will be all for now." She nodded quickly, her throat tight, and left the room. Outside, the air felt too thin. She didn't know whether to cry or smile. Everything in her screamed confusion. Why had he helped her only to appear in her interview like that? Downstairs, she handed the boutique bag to the driver and whispered, "Please thank him for me." The driver nodded and she walked away, disappearing into the crowded street before Mason could come after her. Later that night, Mason sat in his office staring out at the skyline. The HR manager entered quietly. "Sir, about that candidate, Alyssa Moore, she's exceptional. No formal training, but there's something rare about her." Mason didn't turn. "Hire her," the manager blinked. "Excuse me?" "Give her the job," he said. "Entry-level assistant. Start tomorrow." "But she has everything she needs," he interrupted. His voice softened. "Sometimes potential hides under dust. I should know." When she left, Mason leaned back, exhaling slowly. He opened an old email folder labeled Eleanor Moore. A photo flashed on screen. A smiling woman holding a little girl, both laughing in a park. Eleanor, Alyssa's mother, the same woman who had worked for Mason's father 20 years ago, until an industrial accident ended her life and left her children struggling to survive. He had promised to look after her kids. He never did, until today. But something about Alyssa's eyes made that promise feel less like charity, and more like fate reminding him of a debt long overdue. The next morning, the office buzzed with its usual rhythm, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, deals being made. But for Alyssa, the world felt entirely new. She stood by her cubicle on the 27th floor, clutching her ID badge as if it were a medal. Her first day at Harrington Dynamics. The HR manager had called late the night before, informing her she'd been selected for the administrative assistant role. She barely slept after hearing it. She had cried quietly in her tiny apartment, whispering thanks to no one in particular because she didn't know who to thank. Now, she adjusted her borrowed jacket and took a deep breath, glancing around at the glass walls and endless corridors. A voice interrupted her thoughts. "First day jitters?" She turned to see a friendly face, Marcus Reed, one of the junior analysts. He was tall, approachable, with that easy smile people in corporate environments rarely wore. "Yeah," Alyssa admitted, chuckling nervously. "I feel like I'm trespassing in someone else's dream." "Don't worry," Marcus said, leaning casually against the cubicle wall. "We all felt like that once. Just keep your head down, work smart, and you'll be fine." His warmth calmed her, but it didn't stop the nerves that fluttered every time she saw Mason Bennett walk past. He didn't acknowledge her in public, not even a glance. But she could feel his presence like a quiet storm behind the polished glass of his top-floor office. Throughout the day, she buried herself in work, organizing digital files, scheduling meetings, sorting reports she barely understood but was determined to learn. By late afternoon, her fingers ached, but her spirit burned bright. For the first time in years, she felt useful. When the clock neared 5, the HR manager appeared beside her desk. "Mr. Bennett wants to see you in his office," she said briskly. Alyssa's heart stopped. "Me? Yes, he said it won't take long." She stood, smoothing her suit nervously. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. The doors opened to a quiet, modern space. Black marble floors, panoramic city views, and an atmosphere that demanded respect. His assistant gestured her in. "He's expecting you." Mason looked up from his desk as she entered, his gaze calm but intense. He motioned to the chair opposite him. "Sit down, Alyssa." She did, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I wanted to see how your first day went," he said. "Settling in?" "Yes, sir." "Everyone's been kind. I can't thank you enough for the opportunity." His eyes softened for a moment. "Don't thank me yet. The hard part starts now." She smiled faintly, unsure how to respond. He leaned back in his chair. "Tell me something, Alyssa. What made you walk into that boutique yesterday? Most people in your position wouldn't have even tried." She hesitated. "Desperation, I guess. My brother's medication ran out and rent's overdue. I couldn't afford to lose another interview because I didn't look the part." There was no self-pity in her tone, just truth. Mason admired that. He saw a reflection of the hunger that had once driven him when he was younger, before the boardrooms and billion-dollar contracts. "Do you always take chances that scare you?" he asked quietly. She blinked. "Only when I don't have a choice." Something in that answer struck him deeper than expected. His fingers brushed a photo frame on his desk, the one of his late father and a small boy. He thought of promises made and broken. "Your mother. Her name was Eleanor, wasn't it?" Alyssa froze. You knew her?" Mason nodded slowly. "She worked for my father years ago. She was one of the kindest women I ever met. I was supposed to help her family after she passed, but I didn't. I'm sorry." Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. "You remember her?" "Every day I walk past the old plant," he said quietly. "I see the nameplate where she used to work. I've never forgiven myself for not keeping my word." Alyssa looked down, her voice trembling. "You don't owe us anything. Life moved on." He studied her for a long moment. "Maybe I do owe you, or maybe fate just gave me another chance to make things right." The room fell silent, filled only by the low hum of the city below. "I didn't hire you out of pity," Mason said finally. "You earned this, and you'll keep it by doing what you did today, showing heart when others show fear." Alyssa nodded, wiping her eyes. "Thank you, sir." As she stood to leave, he said, "Alyssa?" She turned. "Don't ever hide where you come from," he said. "It's what makes your rise mean something." She walked out of his office with her chest tight, her mind spinning. For years, she'd believed people like him couldn't see people like her. But Mason Bennett wasn't what she expected. He wasn't the untouchable millionaire headlines described. He was something else. Downstairs, Marcus was waiting near her desk. "So," he grinned, "you survived your first day?" "Barely," she said, laughing softly. As the office lights dimmed and night wrapped around the skyline, Mason stood by his window, watching her through the glass below, one small figure in a sea of ambition. But there was something about her he couldn't shake. Not just guilt, not just memory. It was as if life had drawn them into the same orbit again for a reason that hadn't yet revealed itself. He whispered to himself, "Let's see where this second chance leads." Rain glazed the glass walls of Harrington Tower that evening, streaking light down like threads of silver. The city glowed beneath the storm, cars shimmering on wet asphalt, horns echoing in the distance. Inside, the building was mostly empty, now except for the quiet hum of the cleaning crew and the low jazz playing from Mason Bennett's office. Alyssa was still there. She had volunteered to stay late, determined to prove herself. Her small desk lamp cast a soft circle of light as she typed the last of the reports, cross-checking shipment data for the next morning's presentation. She wanted to make sure everything was perfect. Every number, every line, every word. The elevator chimed. She looked up and froze. Mason stepped out, jacket folded over his arm, sleeves rolled, his presence commanding even in silence. "You're still here?" he asked. Alyssa quickly stood. "Just finishing the report, sir. I didn't want to leave them incomplete." He smiled faintly. "It's nearly 9. You don't have to prove your worth in one day." "Maybe not," she said, "but it's the only way I know how." Her honesty struck him again. He walked closer, his reflection merging with hers on the glass partition. "Most people would have left hours ago," he said quietly. "You remind me of myself when I started out, working until my ambition bled into obsession." Alyssa glanced at him, her voice soft. "And did it pay off?" He chuckled dryly. "It did. I got everything I thought I wanted. The penthouse, the cars, the title. But somewhere along the way I forgot what I actually needed." She tilted her head. "What was that?" He looked out the window. "Purpose." Alyssa hesitated, watching him for a long moment. There was a heaviness behind his calm, a loneliness no wealth could cure. "Maybe purpose finds you when you least expect it," she said gently. Like a girl asking to borrow clothes for an interview. That made him turn. For the first time, Mason laughed softly, not out of amusement, but recognition. "You might be right," he said. "That day, I didn't just see a girl trying to survive. I saw someone I'd once promised to protect. Your mother had that same fire in her eyes." Alyssa smiled faintly. She used to say, "Kindness doesn't need wealth, it just needs courage." I didn't understand it until yesterday. The air between them quieted, heavy with shared memory. Then Mason reached into his briefcase and placed a sealed envelope on her desk. "This is for you," he said. Her brows furrowed. "What is it?" "Your official employment confirmation and a scholarship fund," he said. You'll work here part-time while finishing a business degree. Fully sponsored by the company. Her lips parted in shock. Sir, I can't accept that. It's too much. It's not charity. Mason interrupted gently. It's investment. You've earned it. I see something in you, Alyssa. Leadership, resilience. You don't just belong here. You're the kind of person this company needs. Her eyes welled up again, but this time with gratitude instead of fear. I don't even know what to say. Then don't, he said softly. Just prove me right. For a long moment, neither spoke. The storm rumbled outside like distant applause. Alyssa finally whispered, Why me, Mr. Bennett? There are hundreds more qualified. Because I owe your family a debt, he said, voice firm but filled with emotion. But that's not why I'm helping you anymore. I'm helping you because you remind me what all this is for. Every building, every contract, every dollar. It means nothing if it doesn't change someone's life for the better. She looked at him, tears slipping down her cheek. Then I'll make sure your kindness isn't wasted, he smiled faintly. I know you will. Outside, thunder rolled. Mason checked his watch and motioned toward the elevator. Come on, let me drop you home. They rode down in silence. The elevator lights reflected off the mirrored walls, framing them like two chapters of the same story. One written in success, the other in struggle, both finding meaning in the same space. When they reached the lobby, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Mason's driver opened the car door, but Alyssa hesitated. Thank you for everything, she said. You didn't just give me a job, you gave me hope. He nodded, voice low. Hope is the rarest form of currency. Spend it wisely. As she stepped into the car, Mason turned toward the window, watching her leave through the city's reflection. Her silhouette glowing against the storm, walking into the night not as a poor girl anymore, but as someone reborn with purpose. Back upstairs, he returned to his office and picked up the old photo of Eleanor Moore once more. Debt repaid, he whispered. But deep down, he knew this wasn't repayment. It was redemption. Days turned to weeks. Alyssa thrived. Her reports became sharper, her ideas more strategic. Within months, her name appeared on internal memos as assistant project coordinator. Mason rarely interfered, but he watched quietly, letting her climb without shortcuts. And one bright Monday morning, she walked into his office, holding a thick folder of proposals. Sir, she said with a confident smile, I think I found a way to cut logistics costs by 15% without layoffs. He looked up, genuinely impressed. Show me. As she began her presentation, her words clear and certain, Mason realized something profound. This wasn't just the girl who once borrowed clothes for an interview. This was a woman rewriting her destiny. When she finished, he said, You've got leadership written all over you, Alyssa. One day this company might have your name on the door. She laughed softly. Let's take it one step at a time. And as the morning light filled the room, Mason smiled. Not as a CEO, but as a man who finally understood that the richest investments aren't in stocks, buildings, or companies. They're in people. Because sometimes a single act of kindness, one borrowed outfit, one second chance, can change two lives forever.